Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Teacher's Point of View. I mean, I've got a pretty incredible man on this episode. I mean, Paul Hannaford, you've had a remarkable kind of life, haven't you? I mean, you've gone through your lows and you've really come back in terms of fighting your way through life in some respects, and actually now on this journey of making a change for so many children. I mean, like, can you kind of introduce yourself and like the journey you've been on in your life, mate?
Yeah, my name's Paul Hannaford. Yeah, my journey was a long journey. 23 years of alcoholism, addiction, homelessness, gangs, hospitalised, 26 times as a result of overdose and stabbings, as we'll get to later in the podcast. And, if you look what happened to me in all I experienced, and I wasn't a one-off, because please believe me, there are many that fell short when I was using drugs many years ago that didn't make it. And you look back and you think, was it preventable? Was there, a time when I was in primary school when I was doing none of this stuff whatsoever? I was a 10-year-old little boy, just like yourself. I went to play football for West Ham. I don't think I was ever clearly good enough, but I'm 10. I can choose to do what I want. I was vulnerable. I was bright. I was innocent, and I had a future. And it ended up becoming extremely dark, and only died many times because of my choices. Things sort of changed. Secondary school, it stopped. The ice cream and jelly stopped. Primary school, you're in year 8 now, and there is alcohol and drugs, being taken, not in school, but outside the school gate. And unfortunately, this is just a mock-up bit of weed, but I've obviously tried a bit of weed once, and it's not real weed, it's just a bit of paper rolled up. But this is when I do the workshops, it's just an example. And it got passed to me one day, and I tried it, and unfortunately, it changed me. I think the year of me smoking weed, I think I'd been chucked out of 3 secondary schools because of my behaviour. I was no longer playing football. And next thing I know, I'm in a pupil referral unit. Have you heard of them? PRUs?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, I work in PRUs now, as we'll get to in a minute. So I turned up at this school, so-called school, and the staff are doing their best with us. So you've got to remember, this school now, there's 50 of us average. So you've got white boys, black boys, Asian boys, and girls. But the majority of it was boys, 90%. And all these boys were cannabis smokers, or most of them. So I start hanging about with these boys after school. We get chucked out of there eventually because of our behaviour. So now I'm on the streets, TJ, and I'm like 15. I should be year 11. I should be studying, to go off into life. University, college, but I'm not. So now I'm on the street. I'm in a gang. There's 10 of us. A mixture, black, white boys, Asian boys. So the next thing I know, I've got my knees on me, a knife. So that's gang rules. Any gang you join, they carry knives. So we're fighting other gangs. What's happening now is I'm getting bored with cannabis. We're experimenting with other drugs. So now things like amphetamines, LSD. And when I mean alcohol, I was getting paralytic drunk every night. That costs money. I ain't got a job. So what do? Or we commit crime every day. It might have been, a bit of shoplifting and this and that, but every day we're going out and we're committing crime. So now I'm picking up convictions. So now at the age of 18, I've got 25 convictions. I've been to prison 4 times. So like my chances of doing anything decent in life is gone. I've got a criminal record. I'm totally dependent on drugs and alcohol up to a certain degree, but life's still okay. I'm getting in pubs now. I'm smart. And I thought I was going to be a career criminal and just go and do the odd prison sentence. But unfortunately, I heard about this drug called heroin. And when we was growing up years ago, me and my gang, we despised the word heroin, and we looked at heroin addicts like they were scumbags. Now, as well as me, everyone that will watch this podcast, when we walk past streets and we'd see people in doorways wrapped in sleeping bags and they're filthy dirty, 95% of them, not all of them, but 95% are heroin dependent. And I should look and think, my God, how do they get like that? I was smart at the time. I was 18 stone. I had hair then. I should brill cream it. I should think I was Bugsy Malone probably. But anyway, one night, I'm out of an ex-gang member, or a gang member at the time, and he told me when he was in prison he tried heroin. And I went, "You're joking. What did you try that for? We'd never touch that." Anyway, 2 hours later, he convinced me to get some. Not his fault. My choice. Every drug I took was my choice. No one made me take anything. So all of a sudden, he got this bit of tinfoil out, full of his mouth. Started burning and smoke coming off of it. It's called Chasing the Dragon. He passed it to me. I tried it and bang, it got me. That drug took me to hell. I didn't smoke weed again. I didn't drink alcohol, and I ended up losing a lot of weight. I think within 12 months, I'd lost 5 stone. Stopped washing. I was immaculate. My teeth were in a funny colour. My gang now, I'll come back to them in a minute. They got nothing to do with me. You know, I'm a heroin addict. They despise me. I was leader of the gang, and they despise me now. You know, I'm skinny, what you call a crackhead. Then I started taking crack. But next thing I know, I got bored with smoking it. So what do? I started to inject it with a needle. And the reason I show you this needle, because this is the stuff I take to school and show kids, you know. So now I hate needles, but I've got no choice. I've got to inject myself. So all of a sudden, all the veins in my hands are going, my arms, my neck. I'm injected in my private parts, my feet. 2 years later, all the veins are collapsed. And I started injecting crack. And I remember I injected crack one day, pulled the needle out my arm, the metal bit snapped off. And I remember seeing it under the skin. I got some tweezers, tried to dig it out, and blood everywhere. And I left it there. 3 days later, my arm swelled up, got infected, went to A&E. And the doctor in A&E looked at me like I was a lunatic. He said, "What you got a needle in your arm for? How'd that happen?" I said, "I'm a drug addict." He said, "Why didn't you come to hospital when it happened 3 days ago?" I said, "I couldn't. I had to get some money for drugs." So they operated. After the operation, the doctor said, "We've left it in your arm. In fact, it's still there now. I can feel it under the muscle, feel the needle." And he went to me, "Stop injecting crack and heroin. You're going to die soon." I said, "Doctor, I can't stop. I just couldn't stop. No matter what I tried, I could not stop." And I found out I had 2 veins left. All of us in our groin, we have an artery, an ephemeral artery. It's the biggest vein in the body, but this needle was too small. So I had to start using one of these. And that is painful. Now, you've got to remember, TJ, at this time, my drug habit now has gone up to £500 a day. I ain't got a job. I'm a thief, as we all know. So now I've got to steal £2,000 worth of goods every day from department stores. So I nick designer stuff, Armani, Boss, Ralph Lauren, all the designer labels, they sell quickly. And I had a few men that used to buy stuff off me. And they used to give me a quarter for whatever I had. So £2,000 got me £500. And I've got to do this 7 days a week. There's no day off for me now. I'm desperate. You know, there's no like, I'll use Monday, I'll have Wednesday off. This is every day. I'm desperate. And I'm waking up in crack dens. Anyway, all of a sudden, where I'm injecting myself 50 times a day, my legs, as you might have seen on the my website, broke down. And I got infections. So now I'm waking up in these drug dens, TJ. I'm not waking up by myself, by the way. I'm waking up in these drug dens all over the country, mainly London, Essex, but they're everywhere. And next to me are men and women from all different backgrounds, rich, poor, black, white, Asian, Muslims, Jews, Hindu, Sikhs, all different religions. Addiction don't care about that. And you look at these women in these drug dens, and you could tell once they were quite pretty girls, but they looked like they were 50 years of age. They was in their 20s, some of them. You know, and some of them, not all, were selling their bodies. So they were sleeping with loads of men all night, you know, selling their bodies to fund their drug habit, heroin and crack. Anyway, my legs got infected, kept injecting. And my left leg went down to the bone and it stunk of rotten flesh. So at this point now, I'm having to put nappies around my legs to soak up the blood. I've got no bandages. It's getting infected. I'm not eating. You know, I get £500 a day. I'm eating 3 or 4 times probably a week. And that's probably a Mars bar, something sweet, you know, adding exciting sugary stuff. So now people are starting to suffer. I guess we started my mum. Let's start my mother. My mum didn't see me for about 5 years. I mean, you know, I didn't care about her. All I cared about was this. And then one day I'm in Essex and I'm walking down the road. My mum come walking past me, close to Romford. And she made eye contact and she completely ignored me. And the reason my mum ignored me, she didn't recognise me. My mum failed to recognise me because I'd lost 8.5 stone at that point. I was so skinny from drugs. Anyway, as things went on, you know, life got tough. I was either waking up in a crack den, a hospital bed because I've been stabbed and overdosed, or a prison cell. That's my life for the next 23 years. You know? And then it got to the point, drug dealers, not nice people. And one day I had a drug dealer some money and he's pulled up in his car, a place called Ilford. And he went, "Where's my bit of money?" So I ain't got it. And he pulled out a knife like this and bang, done me and stabbed me. Lucky enough, I got to a hospital. And in a way, it was a blessing because what happened was eventually, TJ, I got a blood test in the hospital and the doctor went to me, "You've got 3 days to live." He said, "You've got blood poisoning." I had septicemia, pneumonia, and I had a hemoglobin, which is your protective blood cells. Right, they dropped so low, I was 3 days away from death. I needed a desperate blood transfusion there and then on the spot. And he said, if you leave the hospital, 2 days, maximum 3, you'll die. Your immune system will just crash and you'll die. Pneumonia will kill you as well. And I got up and left the hospital. I wanted more drugs. But at this point, the police were after me. Somehow, I mean, years ago, I hate the police now. After they get me into schools and I work alongside them. And I had a choice. Walk to a crack den and die on the sofa in a matter of 40 hours, or give myself up to the police. And I remember I hobbled into this police station, this same police station where I'd self-harmed and all sorts of things, you know, and they didn't like me very much at the time, and I was wanted. And I remember I hobbled in there, I'll never forget it, and I'd all blood in my shoe with my legs all weeping. And I walked up to the reception, I broke down and cried. You know, I was beaten, I was done. Physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, I was gone. And I said, please help me. And I think I just clapped in the reception, cried like a baby. They were quite shocked because they used to think I was this big tough guy gang leader. No, I wasn't. There's no such thing. I was a little boy one day who lost my way with drugs and gangs. So they arrested me, took me back to the hospital, kept me 3 days. And it was touch and go at points, and he died. You know, they got enough blood in me, and they brought me back round. 4 days later, I'm better, but my leg's really bad. They took me to court in a wheelchair. I can't walk. And the judge looked at me. He went 6 months in prison. Now I've been to prison 15 times. You know, only short sentences, but you know, I know the system really well. And the first person you see when you go to a prison is a doctor. And the doctor looked at my leg. He went, you ain't coming in my prison. He said, we're not surgeons. We can't cut your leg off. He said, it's really bad. So what I did was I found a local hospital up in Essex called Broomfields. And they said, yeah, bring him in. We'll amputate his leg. So they chucked me back on the minibus with 3 prison guards, took me to the hospital. They took me up to the theatre. And they were just about to anaesthetise me and knock me out and cut my leg off. Another doctor came in and went, stop, don't cut his leg off. Not yet. I'm going to try and save it with maggots. And what they did was they got hundreds of maggots in a jar from a hospital. They breed them to put on wounds, and they wrapped it in a bandage. I mean, the pictures on my website, you might have seen them. And they start eating the rotten flesh. I mean, you've got to remember, I'm handcuffed to prison guards at this point. And for 4 or 5 days, the bandage comes alive and the maggots are all the rotten flesh, and it saved my legs. You know, it stunk and it was really painful, but they saved my legs. 12 weeks I was handcuffed to the hospital bed. And every 8 hours, 3 new guards would come, 3 would go. So over a period of just 1 day, 24 hours, you had 9 guards watching me. It's costing the prison a fortune. Anyway, eventually I finished my sentence. I took the handcuffs off and left. I said, you're free. I said, I ain't got nowhere to go. I said, you don't have a problem no more. Then a nurse walked in when the guards left. She went, now you're not a prisoner. You have to leave the hospital. We need the bed for someone else. And I went to the nurse, but I got nowhere to go. And she went, I'm sorry, I can't do nothing about that. So at this point now, TJ, I'm in his hospital bed. And you know what? No one come to visit me. And all I owned in the whole world was the clothes in the locker next to me. 1 tracksuit and a pair of trainers, what I got arrested in. That was my life in that locker. My family hated me. I stole from them. I put them through hell. I had no job, no home, no money, no wardrobe. I had nothing. So I thought, where do I go? I can go back to the crack den, or I can go and sort my life out. And lucky enough, I went to a rehab in Somerset, and the nurse, I said to her, look, there's a bed for me, but I've got to wait 5 days. She went, okay, I'll let you have 5 days. And that decision from that nurse, I'll never forget it, saved my life. Because she was entitled to kick me out of the hospital, but she let me stay there. Anyway, 5 days later, I turned up at this rehab in Somerset, and do you know what, TJ? It was brilliant. I think I cried for the first week. It was such a relief to get to this place. I mean, my legs weren't right. They never have been. My legs were still bad, but they didn't cut them off. And I slowly got better. You know, slowly got better. Eventually, I got in touch with my mum, and she forgave me. I mean, I don't see her much today, but I see her a couple of times a year, meet her in a cafe. And I slowly recovered, you know. So I thought, and I'm 14 years clean now from drugs and alcohol. But my legs, as you probably see the pictures, they're not healed up. They've still got open wounds in them. I'm on medication for the rest of my life. You know, I haven't got off lightly. I may look fit and healthy, but, you know, I've still got injuries, stab wounds all over me, you know. So I thought 10 years ago, I thought, what am I going to do in my life? You know, I was down in Somerset still. You know, who's going to employ me? Why would you employ me? I can't read and write properly. I've got no qualifications. I've got a string of convictions. You know, I've been arrested thousands of times. I'm an ex-drug addict, which some people look down their nose at, whether you're a user or not a user, it doesn't matter. So my CV in front of any employee doesn't look fantastic, does it? So what can I go and do as a job? You know, I can't be on my feet too long because my legs swell up. So I thought maybe I can go and share my experience. You know, maybe go back to my old school that kicked me out for smoking cannabis. So I went back to Essex from Somerset, and I started going around schools. And that was 10 years ago. And up to date, and now educated 500,000. You know, and I'm doing my best to, I mean, I speak to kids as young as like year 4, 8. I do tailor it, don't get me wrong. It says it on my website, you know, I do, but I show them all the pictures of the maggots and the blood. The kids find it fascinating, you know. So anyway, I had to start making amends, TJ, to people that harmed, you know, my families. And my mum forgive me. And, you know, years and years ago, I got with a girl named Joanne, and she took me back. I was with her from young, and then I kept relapsing. She took me back. And this particular time, many years ago, she took me back. you know, in the height of my addiction. I got off the drugs for a few months. I moved in with her and I got her pregnant. And when she was 5 months pregnant, 5 months, I went out one day and I got back on the gear, on the heroin, left her. And the following day, she's phoned me up crying. She went, where are you? What's happened? I said, I'm back on the drugs. You know, I had a right bad attitude. She went, what do you mean you're back on the drugs? What about me and the baby? I said, I don't care. I'll get rid of it. I don't know. Put the phone down, blocked her. You know, that's how much I cared about her. Drugs were more important now. Anyway, 3 months later, I'm in prison in London. I got arrested for shoplifting. So I'm lying in my bed in a prison cell, serving my sentence, only doing a few months. The door opened, a prison guard walked in, I've got a letter for you. So I opened it up and read it, and it was from Joanne, my girlfriend. She'd found out all the prisons in London to find out where I was, and she told me in the letter she was still pregnant. She wanted to come and visit me. And she found out from the prison I had 1 week left. So I'd have been out before the birth. Anyway, so 2 days later, the guards come and took me from my cell to the visit hall. It was a hot summer's day. And don't get me wrong now, she's got to travel for 3 hours nearly from Essex to London on a hot summer's day on public transport, 8.5 months pregnant. Now, I had no idea what that was like for her, but she did it. And she did that with a little bit of hope because she knew I had 1 week left. Anyway, they took me down to the visiting hall. I'm sitting there waiting, all excited. And the guard let her in. She come walking in. She looked beautiful, you know. And she sat down with me. And she's all dressed in white, you know, and she's all pregnant and big. And she begged me. She said, please, I'll come all this way. When you get out of prison next week, will you move in my flat? So I promised. Will you get a job? I promise. You'll never touch drugs again? Never. Never. And I said, when the baby's born, I'll be by your side. And she got upset. After 1 hour, that's all you had for 1 hour visit, she had to leave. I give her a hug, told her I loved her, and I'll see you next week. She walked off, went back to my cellmate. I said, it's the best day of my life. You know, I can't believe it. I can't wait to get out of prison next week. I got out 7 days later. When you get released from prison, they give you money. So obviously £60, they give it to all prisoners, called a discharge grant. I thought I'm going to give that money to her, go around hers, give her that £60 for, you know, like nappies and milk for the baby. She had that money and then get a job, you know, a bit of building or scaffold, anything really. But on the way out the prison gate, I bumped into another drug addict that I'd used with many years ago. He got out released same day as me from another part of the prison. And I went to an off license with him and bought 1 can of beer. That 1 can of beer turned into crack and heroin. An hour later, I'm in a drug den, injecting. 2 hours later, I was committing crime. Never turned up. Never see her again. And that's the power of addiction. You know, that's the girl I fell in love with, who's got my daughter in her belly. And yet I'm still going to go and use on top of that. So eventually I hear my daughter gets brought up by another man a few years later, which is okay. You know, my ex met someone else, married him. And my daughter now calls that man her dad, which is fair enough. So anyway, I moved back to Essex, as I said, started doing my talks in schools 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I thought, I wonder what she looks like. So I looked up, I found out my daughter didn't have my surname. She had a stepdad, which is okay. So I Googled her, looked up on social media, found her profile. So I knew what she looked like. Anyway, a few months later, I'm in town walking around and I'm going to a coffee shop and I'm sitting down and she walks in, my daughter. And she gets a drink and sits on a table beside me. And I look and I think, my God, she had no idea who I was. I didn't say anything. And then her stepdad walked in and sat next to her. They've been out shopping. And that's when my past life smashed me in the face. You know, it should be me sitting there. That's I'm her dad. You know, I felt I got a bit more upset and angry myself, not anyone else. I walked out, upset me, to be honest. 3 days later, via my website, like I do every week, every day, I got an email from a school called Sacred Heart, all girls school in Essex, Upminster.
Yeah.
Head of year 10, can you come to our school next week and do an assembly? Well, I found out it was my daughter's school. Her head teacher of year 10 didn't realise we was related because we've got different second names. I thought, wow, I better let my ex Joanne know. I didn't have her number. So I got it off Facebook and I phoned her up and she was all right with me, you know. She went, look, I've heard you sorted your life out, but unfortunately, the day you're going to a rear school, she's at another school down the road doing work experience. I thought, that's my luck. So I turned up at my daughter's school, I think, was it 10 days later? I'd done a big workshop with year 10s, all girls school, walked out the gate at lunchtime to go home. As I walked out the school gate, I looked up in the distance and there she was, my daughter, coming back to school. She must have come back for lunch. Now, I ain't scared of kids, TJ. I speak to tens of thousands a year, but this 14-year-old little girl coming towards me has no idea who I am. And it's just me and her in the street. And I walked up and I was so nervous. I put my hand out. I said, Ria, and she looked at me. I said, who are you? I said, I'm your dad, Paul. And she gave me this little hug and we sat there for 5 minutes chatting. Do you know what? It was the best day of my life. I waited 14 years to do that. So I rushed home and I wrote her a big letter and I explained about my past. And I apologised. I said, I really apologise what I did to you and your mum. I was really unwell at the time with alcoholism, addiction, you know, gangs. I'm not involved with that stuff anymore. And it was quite a long letter. And at the bottom, I said, look, I'd love to see you again. I really would. Here's my phone number. Here's my address. Text me or write me a letter and we'll go out and do something. And I put PS, love, Dad. And I put a big kiss on it. And I posted it. So 2-3 days later, I'm checking my phone every day, no text. 5-6 days went by, the postman's coming, there's no letter. So after a week, there was nothing. I thought, oh, no, do I send a friend request on Facebook and social media? Nothing. So 2 weeks went by and I didn't hear a thing. So after a fortnight, I thought, you know what, TJ? I thought, she must have read my letter by now. She seen my friend request. You know what she decided? That she didn't want to see me. And I was gutted. Why would she want to see me? She's got a dad now. So I thought, life goes on. But the following morning, my phone rang. I picked it up. It was Joanne, my ex. She went, you all right, Paul? I said, well, what's wrong? She said, don't worry, nothing's wrong. We just got back from holiday last night. We've been away for 2 weeks. Ria's read your letter this morning. Would you like to take her out next week for something to eat? I couldn't believe it. So a week later, I picked my daughter up and took her for a cheeky Nando's. And now, you know, as you see the pictures on my social media, I see her all the time. I've got great big Father's Day cards. You know, we go shopping together. So she loves me. Because without this in my life, this rubbish here, which is destroying our communities, knife crime and drugs, I'm a good dad, you know. And I have a responsibility today, you know, to live decent, pay bills, pay my taxes, go to work every day, you know. And as I say, I've spoken to a lot of kids. That 500,000 could be double that. You know, there's been many days in the past 10 years, school days, where I've been sitting at home for a week at a time doing absolutely nothing. And I've offered all these head teachers, all these schools, the information in my workshops, but clearly, you know, they not all, they're from some fantastic head teachers out there. I'm not judging anyone in education, but I strongly believe that the numbers in knife crime is rising. Research it. The numbers in drugs amongst young people is rising. The amount of people getting lines, the gangs, are all over the country right now trying to recruit young people to sell drugs. The numbers are rising. So what we're going to do, just sit about doing nothing, thinking academics are going to keep our kids safe? Is that what we're going to do? Because if we are, then we're completely deluded. We've got to step up a little bit here and get someone who knows what they're talking about to educate these kids. And as you've seen, via my website and my social media, I speak to many children. I have no magic wand, none of us do. But let's do something rather than do absolutely nothing. Because by doing nothing, we leave our kids vulnerable, and then safeguarding, that means nothing. Safeguarding means to protect kids from harm. Well, everything I went through was harmful, and many other people are going through that right now. Yeah. So, you know, I can't, as I said, we've been in lockdown, and over the past 12 months, things have got worse. So we've got to think, come on, you know, let's give these kids a chance out there. Yeah. Mental health, drug addiction, alcoholism, knife crime, gangs. It's not going away. There's no vaccine for it. It's everywhere. And as I said, it doesn't discriminate, you know.
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible story, man. I mean, there's points where I was getting quite emotional when you were telling me some stuff. I'm not going to lie, and well done, man. I mean, firstly, well done. Like, what incredible inspiration you are. I mean, like, it's so good to hear. Like, you've made amends with family, and you've actually turned it around. I mean, not everyone gets to do that, you know. I mean, you still see it, and I see it. I mean, I live around the corner from Ilford. I mean, every time I go to Ilford, there's people like that are sleeping in sleeping bags, like on the floor or under bridges, and you know, like, I mean, it's especially like the back of Exchange. I mean, Jesus Christ, there's loads there, isn't there? And it's astonishing. I mean, like, talk to me. What could have changed your life? I mean, what could have like stopped you going down that direction? Even like you said something about primary schools at the beginning. I mean, like, what could have kept your innocence, or actually prevented you, regardless of your innocence going or not, but actually prevented you from going down that path?
Someone to come in and sit in front of me when I'm 10 and tell me this story of consequence. So that enlightens me. What that does is, you know, that makes me conscious. That makes that then I can see this stuff happening in front. You know, I recognize it. It's not just, oh yeah, these kids are doing this, I'll do it and see what happens. You know, I understand. I've still got a choice. No one made me take the drug. No one made me carry a knife. No one made me join a gang. No one made me drink the alcohol. But I didn't understand later on. You can only understand consequence when you're in it. Does that make sense? So I needed someone like me to come and sit in front of me, like I do with tens of thousands of kids every year, and show the consequences, the blood in my legs, the maggots, talking about what I did to my mum, talking about what I did to my girlfriend. You know, this is a family illness. I affected many, many people, but the most ones I harmed was the ones that love me. So then again, I've got to look back and not point a finger at any head teacher, but were my school being responsible by not, or irresponsible by not educating me around the dangers of this? Because, you know, come on, we have a duty of care. If you work with children, depends what, you know, if you're SLT, you have a duty of care towards their personal well-being. It's called safeguarding, citizenship, PSHE, personal social health. That is everything outside the school gate. So yes, I strongly believe that if someone would have come and sat in front of me when I was 10 and then give me it again when I'm 12, 13, when I get to year 8, because my environment's changed now, you know, I'm out more about, you know, I'm more exposed to this stuff, then give me another talk. So I give 3 talks in a period of 6 years. So when I do start making end choices, I understand there might be a consequence. You know, it's impossible to stab someone if you don't carry a knife. It's impossible to become a drug addict if you don't take drugs, you know. Now, we know there's a difference between social drug use and addiction, but, you know, we know addiction's slowly creeping up. Not everyone who takes drugs is a drug addict. We know that. Not everyone who drinks alcohol is an alcoholic. We know that. But when you've got groups of boys running around in a minute with big knives on them, selling drugs, what these county lines do, that's not the healthiest group to knock about with. And they're growing, you know. So going back to your question, I needed someone to come and sit in front of me who knew what they were talking about. Not a graph on the wall, not something offline, which weren't about then. I needed someone with a hard-hitting story to come in and sort of shock me a little bit. That's what I needed. And, you know, all the people that, as I said, died. A lot of people in drug dens, you know, didn't make it. A lot of them were in Ilford and Barking, you know, not far from you. I mean, I went down the road from you. But as I said, you've seen it in black and white. Homelessness, drug addicts, it's more and more and more and more and more. And the numbers are rising. So we've got to ask questions, you know, do we really care about the kids we work with? You know?
I mean, it's obviously one of the things that happened to you was that you kind of got excluded and sent to like a pro or whatever. I mean, like, what were like kind of the emotions that you were going through at that point? Because, like, would you have kind of wanted the school to actually not exclude you and find a way to help you? Like, I mean, like, what could have school done to do that at that point?
Well, they see today things have changed massively. From 40 years ago when I was, you know, going from transitioning from primary to secondary, you know, if you were naughty in school for whatever reason, their ideology was we'll kick you out, you go to a pro. But now that schools are doing their best now to keep kids in school for their behaviour, so they have like little pods where they can go to. They have an exclusion part on the premises in the school. So what they do is they're desperate. I mean, a lot of schools are doing their best to catch kids that are flagging up, that are probably at risk of, you know, being excluded and joining gangs, and they're giving them a bit more TLC, I guess. So I think there's more to be done. I work in pros, lots of them. You know, I work in primary, secondary, colleges, I go to prisons, football clubs, I go all over. So when I go to these pros, I understand where these kids are at. You know, they might have come from a traumatic background. They might have come from a broken home. You know, they might have been a bit divorced. Their mum and dads might be involved with drugs. We don't know. But we do know that not all, but I would say all the people I met in the years, whether it's from gang life to becoming a homeless drug addict, I would say, you know, the majority, good 60 to 70%, did come from some sort of trauma and some sort of broken home. The other 30% come from good homes, you know. So these people I'm waking up in drug dens with weren't all coming from broken homes. Some of them were privately educated, you know, coming from really, really, really healthy homes.
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, they should. Look, I know what you're saying, and I think, like with those kids that kind of go through trauma, I mean, there kind of needs to be better systems in education in some respects to deal with that, because I know you're trying to do your best in going in and talking about your story, but in some respects, schools need to kind of be like prepared to actually help kids deal with emotions, whether it be bringing a professional in or actually having trained staff. I don't know the answer to that, but what I'm trying to get at is there should be a level of like understanding that is brought to children in terms of their emotional intelligence, their ability to like look at the perspective, you know, like kind of act like, obviously you cater to what age they're at, but that needs to be embedded into the curriculum in some respects, right? So they can make better decisions for themselves with, even if they are feeling like low and high, you know?
I think all kids should be made aware that, you know, it's okay to as adults with mental health, you know, because this can be embedded in a young age. To if they've got something going on from at home, or there's something going on from in their life, that they can go to someone in a school. They know there's a platform there. Yeah. You know, announce it in a big assembly and say, okay, look, if anybody, or, you know, individually in classes to say, if anyone's struggling, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, try and find these individuals that are slipping through the net and they are being put in pros. I'm not saying all pros are breeding grounds for, you know, drug addiction or gang life. I'm not saying that. But if you actually look at the majority of boys I speak to in prison, and I speak to many, hundreds every year all around the country, as well as hundreds of thousands of kids in schools, the majority of the boys I speak to that have slipped through the net, got involved with gang violence, gone to prison for murder, or drug dealing or whatever they've gone to prison for did not have, you know, that bit of care that maybe someone could have got hold of them at that point, you know, before they went off to that direction.
Yeah.
You know, I'll go to some fantastic crews. They're not all bad. Yeah, I'm just trying to say, but when you put, like me, 50 kids together and 70% of them from broken homes or where there's been a bit of trauma, then there's going to be, you know, some consequences. There's going to be some poor decisions, you know. So yeah, I believe all kids should be made you know, the emotional awareness, mental awareness. There should be, you know, not just, let's just not focus. Academics obviously is fundamentally important, it's part of schooling, but schooling is to create bright futures and not wasted ones. And there's too many wasted ones at the minute. So collectively, let's put academics to one side and talk about personal well-being, mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, all them things, you know, really take care of these kids, especially the ones that flag up. I mean, all kids deserve, you know, a bright future.
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it breaks my heart. Kind of the gap between the advantage and the disadvantage keeps growing because we do let kids like kind of fall through the cracks and like kind of forgotten about. You know, I mean, like those kids that do come from privileged backgrounds, ultimately, like even if they get C grades, let's face it, right? They've got connections. They're probably going to be all right. But it's those kids that come from deprived areas. That's what the system makes very difficult to get you, like for you to get out of that, right? I mean, unless you're like really bright academically or you're really good at exams, memorizing information, like the odds like are really against you if you're not academically bright in terms of if you come from a deprived family, right? So I mean, like unless you've got something about you create a business or you do something that's spectacular, you're kind of stuck in you're going to be stuck in like a dead end job or like a dead end like in terms of where your aspirations. And I mean, like that all needs to change, right? I mean, like these kids not feeling worthy or like good about themselves, that is what really needs to be done about education to help them, right? So, I mean, what can be done to make sure that we are giving those kids a better future? I mean,
there's lots of things. Look, and I keep referring to early intervention, but what do we call bright futures? We you know, I'm trying to prevent kids from having a wasted one like me. So clearly, look, I have 2 jobs to do when I go to a school. Yeah, 2 or 3 jobs. The main one is for them kids to not end up outside a shop at the age of 25 begging, wrapped in a sleeping bag because they become drug addicts. Number 2 is for them not to go to prison and serve a life sentence because they've stabbed and killed someone. So if we can keep kids from them 2 things and then go a little bit further with the mental awareness, letting them know things will be okay, you know, not putting too much pressure on the kids to, you know, get this degree. Okay, yeah, you know, do your best in education. But remember, you know, a bit more love in schools, I think. I'm not saying there's not a lot of love in schools, but it's hard when you've got like, you know, 1,000 kids in a big secondary school and you know, as I said, many are being slipped through the net. It's got to be a bit more TLC, emotional well-being, you know, more of it. And let these kids understand about, you know, the future. Everything will be okay. You just got to make certain decisions. Be brave enough to stick up for yourself and ask for help. You know, talk about your feelings because everyone talks about mental health. What is mental? There's 2 lots of there's mental illness, which I had, which is addiction, alcoholism. You know, the clear mental illness. But then there's mental health. We all suffer with mental health, some form or another, don't we? Whether you want to put that down to depression, I don't know. I'm not a doctor or, you know, a psychiatrist, but you know, it's about well-being. Letting, you know, reinforcing it. Everything will be okay. You've just got to make certain choices. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, as you said, from deprived areas where there's low income, there is a higher possibly crime rate. There's a higher rate of gang violence. There is a higher rate of knife crime. We know that. We've got to look at the hotspots here of where, you know, the most things are happening. Big cities, I guess. I don't know. I'm not judging London, Birmingham. You know, if you look at any social media platform, knife crime, Google it. Birmingham and London have got the highest rate. Then you've got leafy little towns I go to all over the country. I'll go in the middle of nowhere sometimes, you know, and there might be a bit of county line slipping out there, but there's never stabbing out there, but there is still drugs. You know, the drugs are still in these little seaside towns everywhere we go. So I think kids, as well as getting maths and English, should get regular lessons on emotional well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, all these things, and from probably year 4 right the way through as part of the curriculum. You know, keep them sane, keep them safe, and let them understand that, you know, it's okay to feel sometimes like they do. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? Because it's hard, because if you're not an addict, then you don't understand what an addict is going through. Like, I mean, like if people see that you've tried and to quit and then you failed, I mean, they just give up on you, right? I mean, like that's kind of like the circle of addiction in some respects, like you kind of going around in circles. So it's about kind of making sure that we are preparing kids to be able to deal with emotions and not actually go down that route. I mean, and it's usually because you feel like you're not going anywhere in life, or if you don't feel fulfilled. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone, but I'm just saying, like, those are things affect like your mental well-being, and it kind of maybe make you resort to those kind of things. But if like the problem here in the UK is we've got a very reactive approach to mental health. I mean, we spend billions every year trying to actually help the people that have it now, but actually what we could be doing is spending like even a proportion of that into like younger children, and that would actually like reduce the level of mental health in the future. I mean, we'd save tens of billions of pounds like in the future if we get this right now.
I'm on the same hymn sheet as you 100%. I say the same aspect of what's it cost to keep someone in prison for 15 years if they stab someone. £750,000, and that's taxpayers' money. How many people in prison for murder? We've got the highest number of people in prison for murder than any other country in Europe. Then you look at the consequences of alcoholism and addiction, the amount of money it costs to sort of treat that, put some of that into early intervention. So the all-round well-being of a child, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, we need to take care of them. My side of the story is that you've got a better chance of going off and doing something decent if you don't end up where I end up. That's my job, yeah? And as we know, you just said it, you walk through Ilford and they're there. I was at a soup kitchen the other night. I don't know, I got asked to do a bit of volunteer work, and I went down there, and these addicts come out of nowhere. The woman that runs it said there's like 200 of them, and you think, well, I don't see them about, but they come out. They just come out of the woodwork to get fed. And you looked at the state of some of them, it was terrifying. And this was like, I got asked to do this in a little town centre where the population's not that great, and yet there's 200 known addicts. And I got speaking to some of them. They were similar to me, same sort of stories, injecting drugs every day. And you look and you think, wow, man, And I guess if we was to ask all these addicts, and like myself, who's got lots of experience with addiction, was I just a bum on a seat at school? Was academics that was it? I mean, I think times have changed a little bit, but I'm not saying they've changed a lot. I'm not sure if you had it. What are you? I think you're 30, 31, and you've got to look back at your schooling and say, okay, I knew how to read and write to a certain point, but my emotional well-being, as you say, was the main. I was growing up, wasn't I? Quite fast, so I needed to. There's more to be done. There's more to be done. As I said, I'm not qualified in anything. I just have lots of experience in consequences. So, as I said, if I can steer kids away from living a lifestyle I did, then there's a better chance of them doing something decent. If they go down the route I did, and they get heavily involved like I did, then all their schooling, no matter how clever they are, will mean nothing.
Yeah,
it will mean nothing.
And that's the
thing. As I said, I've used with some really intelligent people in drug binge. I mean, come from proper affluent schools, and I've also used with many others from comprehensives and grammar schools. It didn't matter. So that's the job I have to do today. So I just think that if more people in education can see what's going on in the world and realise that, we can do a little bit more in academics. I know academics is a fundamental part of schooling, but we've got to look at these kids, as I said, the emotional well-being, their physical well-being, their mental well-being, all that stuff is so important. Every child matters.
Yeah.
Every child matters,
Yeah, honestly, it breaks my heart. Like, so many kids go through the system, not actually, getting forgotten about. I mean, you're not even just talking about kind of drug addicts, gang members. You're talking about kids that just don't go through the system, not feeling they're good enough. Like feeling like they might be bullied, or like just feel lack of confidence, and they go through like school, like feeling like that for 18 years. Do you know what I mean? I mean, how sad is that? The first 18 years of your life, you don't even enjoy them. I mean, those are the times where you're meant to be curious and interested in things and actually want to explore things. Those are things that we really need to start bringing back into school, and actually finding kids what they're passionate about. Because I guarantee you, if a school found something that you're passionate about and they can help you drive your motivation towards it and deal with your emotions, I mean, I don't think you would have had that journey, I'm not qualified to say that, but I mean, like when I'm passionate about something, there's not really anything that would get in my way. When I want to make something happen, I'll make it happen. Do you know what I mean? And if it's about a school, I know you didn't want to teach like a range of subjects to give kids options. I get that, but what about those kids that aren't good at any of those options, but actually good at other things? I mean, what about them? You know? So I think we really need to think about how we're going to actually move education forward. So what we're doing is investing in the country to make sure that we have a better and brighter future, not just for money wise, but actually happiness, love, empathy, care, understanding, you know, like those human traits. And that is what we're drilling out of them in some respects.
Look, to be honest with you, I got approached last year. I mean, you know, I love what I do, but I got approached by this guy, a friend of mine, and he said, "Oh, have you ever thought about writing down all your experiences and what happened to you from an early age right up until now? You know, all the aspects of my life." So what I did do is, I'll show you in a minute. You know, last year I sat down for a whole year. I had this ghostwriter follow me around, and I dug deep and remembered most of the stuff I got up to. You know, so wait a minute, sorry. I'm not trying to plug this because it will sell itself, but I wrote a book, yeah, and it's called The Unconscious Kid, right? And in here, you know, it's not just packed with consequence, but it's got all the injuries of my pictures of my legs and that, you know, which you can see, yeah, with the maggots in them and the blood, and you know, and it's got pictures of me and my mum and my daughter, you know, the people I let down years ago, and you know, this isn't about me. This is about society. More to be done. What's going on right now where we live, the drug dens. You know, with needles. I went to a drug den once. There was needles in a cot. You know, I was cleaning at the time. I cleared it out for the lady. You know, people think they live in these leafy little towns and villages, and they might see your drug addict outside the shop begging, but there are hundreds in crack dens sharing needles. These are all once someone's son or daughter. They were 10 years of age once. Have we missed an opportunity, or was the opportunity never given? That's what we've got to ask this. See, we're missing so many opportunities. You know, mental health, well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being, spiritual well-being. You know, the whole is loads more. You know, it ain't just about. There's so much to be done for kids. And as I said, my website says drugs awareness, knife crime awareness, alcohol awareness. So I'm just going in sharing my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, it's all I can do. You know, as I said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but I've got enough evidence, I think, on my social media platforms from the feedback over the past 10 years, tens of thousands of comments. You know, you put me in front of the kids in your school, and then I'll give them a better chance of going off and staying away from these harmful things, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Listen, I think you've done a remarkable job, and I think you're doing a remarkable thing right now. Hopefully we can incorporate this more. You know, I mean, I genuinely believe that this could happen this year. I feel more people are becoming aware, more people are willing to stand up. I feel like teachers are finally united in respect to, I mean, that's the one good thing about Gavin Williamson this year. I mean, he's actually united the teaching profession, albeit against him, but at least he's united the teaching profession. And hopefully we can start making this movement, because in the 21st century, like it's invaluable, you know, like these personal skills and like like awareness skills, you know, like it's good. If we're teaching these kids at like sort of 8-9 years old how to be emotionally intelligent, I mean, they're going to fly by the time they're 16. You know, they're going to be able to like overcome any challenges that they come their way, because the world is forever changing. I mean, like if it was like a few children that were kind of being let down by the system, then fair enough, we've got to look at the children. But you're talking about millions of children, you know, like you've got to question whether the system is working. I mean, how can the system let down millions and millions of children? You know, like we've got to do better, and that's the bottom line, I think.
Well, it's more, all I say is, you know, like on a final note, I just strongly believe that, you know, leadership takes responsibility in terms of education.
Absolutely.
So if we are, you know, in a position of leadership, and you in an organisation where there's lots of young people, no matter what age, but you know, the fundamental age 8 onwards to 16, 20, that minefield they're going through, then you have a responsibility to get them spoken to about what's going on in the world and keep them safe. And that basically, if you Google safeguarding, you know, it says to protect kids from harm. You know, there are many forms of harm for kids, you know. So yeah, so hopefully this podcast might fall on some good ears, it might fall on some deaf ears, we don't know. But you know, I'm available to work. You know, I'm doing online stuff at the minute, and I'm sure when kids are back at school and COVID lifts, I'm getting loads of people interested already. You know, I'll be in schools every day like I normally am, primary, secondary, colleges, all over the United Kingdom. I'm all over the place, as you'll probably see and have seen, you know. So I'd like to thank you for, you know, just highlighting that more needs to be done. You know, and let's see what happens.
I believe we can make it happen, man. I mean, if we keep speaking and we keep like shouting the words, I mean, I genuinely
keep
believe
knocking on doors, you know, come on, responsibility.
Yeah. Come on, let's make it
it's
happen.
All about, you know, it's all down to love. If you love your job and you work with kids, and you should love them and look out for their future. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well done, Paul. I mean,
thank you very much. And as I said, anything else in the future, give me a know and I'll let you know. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks for coming
on. Take care,
TJ.
Have a nice afternoon. Bye, my friend. Bye.